In the vast wilderness of Yankari, lions rule without mercy. They do not chase for sport. They stalk, they wait, and when they strike, it is sudden, brutal, and final. To the lions, every movement in the grass is prey. Every sound is signal to hunt. The savannah is their kingdom, and intruders are only welcome as a meal. It had been 2 years since Bulus Kagoro, a respected civil engineer from Kaduna, lost his beloved wife Arit to a sudden illness. Her death had broken something in him, but not as much as it had shattered his children, Rachit, now 17, and Dangana, fondly called Dan, just 10. To them, Arit was irreplaceable, but barely a year after her passing, Bulus remarried. Her name was Banke, a woman of elegance and kindness, but none of that mattered to Rachit and Dan. In their eyes, she was an invader, proof that their father never truly loved their mother. They believed he moved on too fast, and for that, they punished Banker daily with cold stares, silent treatment, and hurting remarks that pierced deeper than any slap. Still, Banker tried, and Bulus hoped. When his 2-week leave from work finally came through, Bulus made a decision. They wouldn't travel abroad this time. It was too short for that. Instead, they would go somewhere local, beautiful and secluded. Yankari Game Reserve in Bauchi State held promise. He imagined peaceful nature walks, laughter around bonfires, and finally, maybe, just maybe, a moment of unity. If only he knew what he was walking his family into. They arrived in Bauchi via a short flight from Kaduna. A black SUV with tinted windows was already waiting to drive them into the heart of Yankari. The savannah stretched endlessly on both sides, dotted with ancient baobab trees and dry shrubs that shimmered under the afternoon sun. "Isn't it beautiful?" Banke whispered, gazing out the window. No response. Rachit sat in the back seat, arms folded tightly, her headphones blasting music loud enough to drown out her father's voice. Dan leaned against her shoulder, sulking, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I could have gone to Uncle Kabantiok's house this break," Rachit mumbled under her breath. Bulus heard it. He just didn't respond. By the time they arrived at Marshall Echo Lodge, the heat had started to mellow. The stone-built chalets looked inviting, nestled in thick groves with thatched roofs and wooden patios. From where their car stopped, they could hear baboons howling and the distant trumpets of elephants. A sturdy man in his late 50s greeted them with a booming voice.
"Welcome to Yankari Game Reserve,"
he said, adjusting the hunting rifle slung across his shoulder.
"I be Baba Karim, your safari guide. Anything we wanna wan see, lions o, elephant o, hyenas o, just talk am. But make una remember say, for this bush, na dem get the land o, we just dey borrow."
Banker gave him a polite smile. Rachit rolled her eyes as they unpacked and settled in. Bulus tried to lift the mood.
"Dan, come let's check out the area."
"I'm fine," the boy muttered, brushing past him.
"Rachit,"
he asked hopefully. She didn't even answer. Banker placed a hand gently on Bulus's shoulder. "They'll come around. Just give it time." He nodded, but there was doubt in his eyes. Dinner was served under a rustic thatched pavilion. There was masa, peppered bushmeat, suya, tuwo masara, and other northern delicacies. Fireflies danced around the lanterns, and in the distance, one could hear hyenas cackling under the moonlight. Bulus smiled, lifting his fork.
"This is what we needed. Peace, nature, good food."
"Don't pretend like this fixes anything," Rachit cut in, her voice sharp and cold. "You didn't even wait a full year. Mom's body wasn't even cold." Then, silence. All heads turned. Banker blinked rapidly and placed her fork down.
"Rachit!"
"No," she snapped, standing abruptly. "Don't ratchet me. I hate this trip. I hate this place. And I hate pretending we're some happy family." She stormed out into the darkness beyond the lodge, her footsteps echoing through the open land. Bulus stood slowly, wiping his mouth with a napkin.
"I'll go talk to her,"
he said quietly. He found Ratchet by a wooden fence, sitting on a small rock, tears glistening in her eyes.
I miss your mom too,
he said after a long pause.
And every single day.
She didn't look at him. You didn't act like it. He sighed.
There is no perfect way to grieve, Ratchet. I needed someone, not to replace your mother. No one can, but to survive. Banke was never meant to hurt you. She only wants to love you.
A flicker of emotion crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with a scowl. Somewhere behind the trees, a shadow shifted. Unseen, unheard, eyes glowed in the tall grass, following every movement. They returned to the chalet, the mood heavy and silent. The stars above Yankari shone bright, but so did the danger. The sun beamed gently over Yankari Game Reserve, casting golden rays across the vast terrain as the Kagoros stepped out of their lodge. They were met by the cheerful tour guide Baba Karim, who smiled broadly as he greeted.
Welcome again, my people. Make una no worry. Today go sweet. Una go see everything.
The tour began with a slow stroll through the reserve's central hub. Dan clung to Banke's side as monkeys and baboons moved freely. Some walked boldly across the path. Others swung from tree to tree, watching, their curious eyes tracking the visitors. Dan froze when one particularly large baboon stared directly at him and bared its teeth. "Mommy!" he shouted, clutching Banke's arm. Banke pulled him close, but Baba Karim chuckled.
No fear, small man. They no dey bite unless you carry their banana,
he said with a wink. The tension eased a little. They continued to the Yankari Museum, a quiet, cool space filled with ancient pottery, iron tools, tribal carvings, artifacts, and relics from centuries past. Ratchet, who had been moody since they left Kaduna, wandered off and stopped before a mural of a Fulani woman carved into wood. For the first time since the trip began, she smiled. Bulus saw it. He said nothing, but inside his heart warmed. Maybe this trip will work after all.
I want them to see more,
he told Baba Karim softly. The old man grinned.
Aha! You never see anything. Make we go Wiki Warm Spring.
They hiked gently through shaded trails toward the spring. The sound of water running grew louder until they reached the breathtaking turquoise pool, bubbling gently like a giant natural bath. The kids' eyes widened in disbelief. Wow, Ratchet muttered. Is it swimming pool? Dan asked.
No be pool.
Baba Karim laughed.
The natural warm spring. It be like bath water, but better.
They hadn't packed swimwear, but that didn't matter. Dan jumped in fully clothed, giggling and splashing. Ratchet rolled up her trousers and waded in, laughing as she flicked warm water at her little brother. Banke watched with moist eyes. For the first time, they looked like a family. This is exactly why we came, she said softly to Bulus. But just then, Bulus's phone rang, a sharp tone that broke the peace like a slap. He frowned when he saw the caller ID.
Work,
he muttered. He answered as he stepped away from the spring.
What? The wall collapsed?
He backed.
Where's the site manager? Tell Shule not to do anything. I'm on my way.
He returned to the group moments later, his face already stressed.
I have to go. Something's wrong at the Bauchi Dam project. You all should go on the safari ride without me.
But Banke started.
It's okay,
he said, squeezing her hand.
You all deserve this. I'll join you later.
Banke nodded reluctantly. Be careful. Shortly after, the Kagoros boarded the safari jeep, still buzzing from the warm spring adventure. Banke sat in front beside Baba Karim, while Ratchet and Dan hopped into the back, excited.
This one goes sweet,
Baba Karim said as he started the engine.
If locked there outside, we go fit see lion today.
The jeep rolled through the open plains. They drove deep into the reserve, past elephant tracks and old acacia trees. The sun warmed the earth quickly, but they hadn't seen any big animals yet.
Now like that there be,
Baba Karim said.
Sometimes, you go walk out well before you see lion.
Then Dan suddenly sat up and tugged at Banke. I want to wee. Just manage, she pleaded. I want to wee. I am so pressed. Baba Karim frowned.
Use bottle.
Dan shook his head. I can't. I'm pressed. With a reluctant grunt, Baba Karim pulled the vehicle to a stop, grabbed his rifle and said,
Make I follow him. Bet nobody come down from this motor. You hear me, Abi?
Banke nodded. The jeep engine hummed in idle as the two moved into the grass. A few meters away, Dan was barely unzipping when Baba Karim froze. His grip on the rifle tightened.
Shh! Don't move!
From the bush ahead, something shifted. Amber eyes, a growl. Suddenly, a lioness stepped out, lean, powerful, and focused on Dan. Another moved in the grass, then another. Baba Karim whispered harshly,
Dan! Go back slowly! No look back!
Dan obeyed, his heart pounding. Back at the jeep, Ratchet saw movement. Then her eyes widened. Lion! She screamed. Banke quickly reached for the ignition, only to remember with horror Baba Karim had the keys. As the lioness lunged, Baba Karim fired but missed. Run! He shouted. Dan bolted toward the jeep. Baba Karim tried to follow but tripped, his rifle flying from his grip. Before he could recover, the lioness was on him. A sickening roar, a scream, flesh tearing, blood spraying. Banke yanked down into the jeep just in time before Ratchet slammed the doors shut. And through the blood-streaked windshield, they watched the lioness drag Baba Karim's lifeless body away. But then she came back slowly, calmly. She pressed her snout against the glass, her breath fogging the glass, eyes scanning the terrified faces inside the jeep. Banke held tightly to Dan, whose face was buried in her chest. Trembling, Ratchet sat stiffly, her eyes locked on the beast, frozen like a statue. No one moved, no one breathed. Then, as if bored, the lioness stepped away. She circled the vehicle once, then sat by a nearby tree. She's waiting, Ratchet whispered, like she knows we can't leave. Banke reached for her phone, praying. No signal. They were stranded in the middle of the reserve with no car keys, no guide, no weapons, and no signal. And far away in the bustling heart of Jomare town, Bulus was at the dam site, backing orders at workers, still unaware that his family was no longer on a leisure safari, but in the middle of a nightmare. As hours passed, the heat pressed in. The Kagoros rationed the bottled water they had come with. The lioness moved in and out of sight, but never far enough to give them hope. Just as dusk crept in, a loud thud jolted them. A male lion had leapt onto the roof of the jeep. The entire vehicle shook. Dan screamed. Ratchet clutched her seat. The lion's claws scraped against the metal roof, denting it with each step as it prowled above them. Then, crack! The front windshield began to splinter under the lion's weight. Banke screamed, "Hold on to something!" The lion crouched, its massive weight pressing harder. Then, suddenly, it jumped off, landing beside the jeep. And with a deep grunt, the family sat, stunned, sweat clinging to their skin. Ratchet peered through the cracked glass. They are not leaving. They are hunting. Then, a flash of light far in the distance. "Look!" Banke spoke up, pointing. Ratchet saw it too. "We need to signal them." No, Banke pleaded. "If we open the door." But Ratchet was already unlocking the door. "Wait!" Banke shouted, but it was too late. Ratchet stepped out and waved both hands in the air, screaming, "We're here! We're here!" Then, a growl. The lioness reappeared from the tall grass, charging fast. "Ratchet!" Banke screamed. The world spun into chaos as Ratchet tried to scramble back into the jeep. The lion was few feet away. The moment Banke reached for her, a gunshot rang out. The lion dropped mid-leap, dead. They turned toward the sound. Two men stepped out from the bush, holding rifles, local hunters.
Kuna haukani? Me kuke yanan?
One growled. Relief washed over them like a wave. The two hunters now stood by the jeep, rifles slung casually, eyes shifting between the carcass of the lioness and the terrified family inside.
You people lucky.
One said in a thick accent, smirking.
If we no show, that lion go don scatter una.
Banke stepped out slowly, still shielding Dan. "Thank you. I beg, can you help us find our way back to the lodge? The hunters exchanged glances but said nothing. Do you have water? Ratchet asked, her voice hoarse. Instead of answering, one hunter walked straight to the dead lion, poked it with his gun, then began pulling it by the leg toward the bushes. Where are you taking it to? Ratchet asked.
In Arwanki, Naman Mooney.
He snapped. Banker's heart sank. These men were not rescuers. They were poachers. The family regrouped inside the jeep. We need water, Dan whispered. Ratchet took a chance, stepped out and approached the quieter of the two hunters. She pointed at her empty bottle. The man nodded and gestured for her to follow. Banker hesitated. Don't go too far. I'll be fine, Ratchet said, already walking. They arrived at a muddy water spot. Ratchet drank hurriedly, filled 2 bottles, then rushed back. But when they returned to the jeep, Banker and Dan were gone. The second hunter was also nowhere in sight. Where's my family? Ratchet shouted. Suddenly, Banker leapt from behind the jeep, whispering harshly, Shh! Hide! Something's wrong. In the distance, hyenas had gathered around the lioness's body, but they weren't alone. A shadow moved, then another. Lions still lurking. The danger wasn't over. Back at Marshal Echo Lodge, Bulus Kagoro arrived, sweaty and dust-covered, expecting to meet his family relaxing after their safari. But their chalet was empty. He rushed to the reception.
Where is my family?
The staff looked confused as he scratched his head. I thought Baba Karim had returned with them.
What? Do you mean you thought? You don't know? Send people to go check out what the problem is.
Bulus exploded. The room felt silent. Then entered Mr. Yunus, the lodge director.
Sir, it's late. We can't send the team into the bush at night. It's too dangerous.
Bulus slammed his fist on the table.
So, my wife and children mean nothing to you. Sorry.
Yunus said quietly.
But we can't risk more lives. Well, I like the rangers at dawn.
Bulus clenched his fist.
Unbelievable.
Darkness fell over Yankari. Inside the battered jeep, Dan shivered, clutching Banker's scarf as a blanket. The cracked windshield offered little protection from the chill or the predators that lurked in the shadows. Banker sat beside him, kept her ears sharp. Ratchet sat by the shattered door, eyes fixed on the bush ahead. The lions had disappeared, but what was even worse was that they are circling, waiting. Every rustle, every snapping twig sent their hearts racing. Back at the lodge, Bulus paced like a caged animal, still furious.
I'm going myself.
He barked at Mr. Yunus.
You don't know the terrain.
Yunus argued.
If you enter that bush without a guide, you will vanish too. I don't care.
Just then, an old man entered the office. Malam Goni, a retired tracker and hunter.
I sabi the bush,
he said quietly.
I go take you, but you go pay me handsomely, oh.
Bulus agreed without asking questions. Around midnight, inside the jeep, a soft thud landed on the roof. Banker froze. Another lion. It growled low, sniffing, testing the metal. Suddenly, the front glass shattered. A massive paw swept into the jeep, grabbing at air. Dan screamed. Banker yanked him down, her body shielding his. Then she pushed the front seat forward, wedging them against the broken windshield to block the opening. The lion roared in frustration. Then silence. The lion paused, ears twitching. Another sharp noise. A gunshot. The beast growled low, turned its head toward the sound, then, with one final snarl, leapt off the roof and vanished into the darkness. Silence returned, heavy and eerie. Banker panted. Ratchet's hands trembled. What was that? Dan asked. Banker didn't answer. She just listened. The lions were still out there, but so was something else. The family stayed frozen inside the jeep, the echo of the mysterious sound still lingering. Banker peered through the side mirror, hearts pounding. I don't know what it was, but it saved us. They stayed awake, watching the shadows, Then a figure stumbled into view. One of the hunters, the younger one, he was limping, covered in sweat and dirt, eyes wild with terror.
Bude cover, Bude.
He shouted. Banker hesitated. She didn't trust him, but before she could decide, he threw the door open and jumped in.
Cover.
He screamed. Suddenly, a lioness pounced onto the windshield, cracking what was left of it. The hunter screamed, but before anyone could move, the lion snatched him through the opening. Blood sprayed. Screams filled the air. Then, silence. The sky was still dark when Bulus Kagoro climbed into the Land Rover beside Malamguni, the old tracker whose silence said more than words ever could. The engine rumbled through the early silence of Yankari, tires crunching over brittle leaves and dried out grass. They had only headlights, instinct, and desperation guiding them.
Do you know where to start?
Bulus asked, voice tight.
I know the bush.
Goni replied calmly.
We follow the tracks. They will lead us.
They drove for miles. Every few minutes, Goni stepped out, crouched beside the dirt and studied the ground. Broken twigs, crushed grass, faint tire marks.
They went off the road.
He muttered. Bulus's face darkened.
Why would carrying take them off the path? Maybe to find animals. Maybe they asked, but it was a mistake.
As dawn began to break, vultures circled in the distance.
There!
Goni pointed as he stepped on the brakes. Up ahead, vultures circled in the sky. They got out, weapons in hand, and moved slowly toward the site. There, under a crooked acacia tree, lay a crumpled body, bloodied and torn. Bulus ran forward, but Goni pulled him back, moving in first. The man was face down, half covered in dust and leaves. His khaki shirt soaked in dried blood still bore a ripped badge, Yankari Guide Service. A ripped backpack lay nearby. Goni crouched beside it, unzipped it, and inside he saw a folded safari map, a pair of binoculars, and a car key. He closed his eyes slowly.
It's Papa Karim.
Bulus stared at the lifeless form, crushed.
So, he's gone?
Goni stood, his voice sharp now.
This means they are close. Maybe he died protecting them, and if he had the car keys in his bag, then they must still be in the car. We head there now!
Bulus said. The air was still. The sun was rising higher, but inside the battered jeep, Banker, Ratchet and Dan huddled close, arms wrapped around one another, faces soaked with tears and dust. No more words, just prayers, trembling fingers, dried lips calling on God. I don't want to die here. Dan whimpered. You won't, Banker said softly, though even her voice wavered. Then, a distant rumble, an engine. Ratchet's head snapped up. That's a car. They all froze. Dan gasped. A rescue team? Banker's eyes widened. Maybe. But this jeep is hidden. If no one comes out, they'll drive past. She opened the shattered door, slightly looking around. No, wait! Dan grabbed her arm. I have to, she said firmly. Stay inside. If no one comes out, they won't see us. Before the kids could protest, Banker shoved the cracked door open. No! Dan cried, but Banker was already running toward the track road, shouting, waving both arms. At that moment, she didn't care what would happen, whether it was rescue, danger, or worse. She needed to be seen. From the thick bush, a pair of golden eyes locked onto her. The lioness stepped out, her movements slow and deliberate, muzzles rippling under her tawny coat. Back in the jeep, the kids' faces drained of color. Lion! Lion! They screamed, pounding on the glass, but Banker didn't hear them. The roar of the approaching vehicle filled her ears, drowning every other sound. In the Land Rover, Bulus squinted through the dust, his heart lodged. Banker! Beside him, Goni was already stepping on the brakes. The lioness's slow stalk turned into a sudden explosive sprint.
Goni, shoot! Shoot!
Bulus roared, already throwing open his door. Goni aimed, but the beast was closing the gap too fast. Banker turned at the last second, eyes widening in horror, and in that moment, the lioness pounced, her massive body crashing into her with a terrifying force. Then, bang! A gunshot. The pale blue light of the hospital ward fell over Banke, lying still on the bed. Her body was wrapped in thick white bandages, her face bruised, an oxygen tube resting beneath her nose. She had been in this state for 7 days. 7 days of silence, 7 days between life and death. Beside her sat Ratchet and Dan, their eyes red from constant crying. Bulus was there too, his head bowed, one hand gripping Banker's fingers as if he could will her back to them. Ratchet could barely look at her, her voice trembling. I have never treated her well. Not even for 1 day. And she risked her life for us. Her throat tightened, tears spilling over. She could have stayed back in the jeep that day, but she didn't. She stood between us and death. Dan leaned forward, his small hands clasped. God, please bring my mommy back to life. The room was heavy with grief. The beeping monitor was the only sound, each beat a reminder of how fragile she was. Then, a faint sneeze. Ratchet's head snapped up. Bulus froze. Dan gasped.
Banke!
Bulus whispered. Her eyelids fluttered. Just for a moment, tears blurred Ratchet's vision as she grabbed her stepmother's hand. Mommy, it's me, and I'm here. It was a moment none of them would ever forget in a hurry. A reminder that life can change in a heartbeat. 2 weeks later, Banker was wheeled out of the hospital, still weak but smiling faintly. Ratchet walked beside her, holding her hand tightly, never letting go. Dan clung to the other side, as if afraid she might vanish again. Bulus followed closely, his eyes soft with gratitude. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was peace. Wow. Outside, the Bochi sun was warm. Banker closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Ratchet leaned close. Mommy, I will never take you for granted again. Banker's eyes glistened, and I will never stop loving you. As the family drove away together, the wild danger of Yankari was behind them, but its lesson will remain forever. Life is fragile. Love while you can. Forgive before it's too late. Don't wait for tragedy to value the people who stand by you. Sometimes, the one you have pushed away is the one who will give everything to save you. If you enjoyed the story and would love to see more interesting stories, please consider subscribing to this channel, not forgetting to turn on the post notification icon so that once another video is being posted, you will be the first to be notified. Till we meet again in my next video, remain blessed.